What is up, Goat World? Arts and Crafts here, continuing the Goat Format War League Season 6 playoff coverage. To start off this video, I do want to apologize. I know uploads had been a little bit inconsistent recently. Full disclosure, I have had a lot of technical difficulties with my setup over the last week or so, with pieces stopping working and then their replacements not working, so I have to wait for another replacement and all that jazz. But I think I'm finally, knock on wood, fingers crossed, all that good stuff. I think I'm finally in a good spot where pieces of the setup are all functioning as expected, and hopefully the uploads will be a little bit more consistent in the future. Because I know the playoffs are chugging along at a very steady pace, and we've got a lot of ground to cover. But so if you've been watching, we are still chilling in the quarterfinal round. Last video, we saw Bones Generation sweep Nemesis to secure the first spot in the semifinal. We're also continuing to follow Rico Act versus Bomb Squad, but we're actually going to, for today, move up to the top of the bracket and debut two teams that we have not seen at all so far this playoff. That being 4-seed Masters of Oz versus 5-seed Damage Step. So winner of this will face the winner of number 1 seed Bug Catchers and all Greek team Bads, who we have profiled earlier during the wild card round. So interested to see who's going to take this one down. Of course, we're going to start out with a little bit of a team profile here. So you can see Masters of Oz coming in as our 4 seed. They had a very respectable 7-3 record in the regular season. Their matchups are a little interesting because I feel like a lot of the teams that they lost to are pretty decently below them in the standings, but they did take some pretty solid scalps as well. So losses against like Degeneration X and Battle Oxen are probably not what you would have expected, two teams that did not qualify for the playoffs, but they did get some very, very solid wins in the regular season against teams like Rico Act and teams like Bomb Squad. So a little bit of inconsistency just in the level of play, I guess, but still was able to secure this very solid 7-3 record. In terms of metagame breakout, they play Chaos Turbo over 50% of the time. Nothing really too crazy there. The one thing I do want to point out is it doesn't seem like we really have any control players at all on the roster. As I always talk about, you kind of have the 3 top tier strategies in the format: Chaos Turbo, Warrior, and then Chaos Control. Masters of Oz is a team that really doesn't play any controlling decks whatsoever unless you count Chaos Turbo. And instead, outside of Warrior, a lot of the more niche strats that they play also just happen to be more aggressive. Chaos Warrior, Earth Aggro, Mataza combo with like a bunch of equipped spells and Last Will and things like that. So definitely a team that maybe you would consider bringing control against because they play a lot of aggro. But of course, if you're bringing control, you also have to worry about the Chaos Turbo. But still an interesting team to prep against because they kind of are missing one piece of the, kind of rock, paper, scissors of the metagame. If we look at the individual players on the roster, this is really interesting to me because I think this is the first team that we have looked at that has 4 MVP contenders in their ranks here. Dueling High, Jace, Envoy of Chaos, and Jesse S. I believe Jason Envoy, we have done some feature match coverage on the channel already during the regular season, to no surprise considering they all have very, very solid records. So decently top-heavy team, a lot of top-tier talent, a lot of players that are on really, really solid records so far this season. But you'll notice here, outside of those top 4, the consistency so far this season really kind of drops off a cliff, right? Now, having 4 players in the upper echelons of the league is definitely quite an asset going into the playoffs. But if they do end up having to rely on some of these other folks, and of course you need to field a 6-person roster, not just a 4-person roster, they might have some weak spots in the lineup that could be exploited. But, pretty happy if you're this team to have such heavy hitters going into the playoffs regardless. They do have notably also players that are willing to try out different strategies. So even if you know who 4 of the 6 starting roster is going to be, you're not going to be 100% certain what they're playing here. Dueling Eye has a relatively even split between Warrior and Chaos Turbo. Same with Jace between Turbo and Earth Aggro. Envoy of Chaos, primarily a Turbo player, but does throw in a little bit of Monarch action every once in a while. These others, by the way, I think there was a bug in the bot where it didn't record people's decks correctly, so I just straight up don't know what decks these are. But we can probably assume that it's something similar to what they've played already. But all in all, very, very solid team. Lots of, threats. Basically, any one of these four players can put on a hard carry performance if need be, now that we're in the survival style playoff mode. So, going to be pretty tough to prep against because they have a diversity of strategies, although missing, one of the pillars, like I mentioned, but making up for that with a little bit of versatility across their top, seats. Moving on over to damage step in the playoff round as the fifth seed with a solid 6-4 record. Very, very up and down season. Started out with 3 wins in a row, then lost 3 in a row, and then had to go 3-1 in the last 4 weeks to sneak into that playoff spot. Taking some decent names here, kind of similar to Masters of Oz, where it's interesting. They lost to a couple teams below them in the seeding, Bads, Nemesis, Carbonara, all playoff teams, but all below them in the seeding. Also, Goated Dawn, not even a playoff team they took the L to, but they did win against teams like Bones Generation, against 400s, right? So it seems like they kind of maybe play to the level of their opponent a little bit. Makes for exciting matches because even if they're the clear favorites, they might not do as well as you expect, or if they're underdogs, they might overperform, right? So, going to be a fun team to watch here in the playoffs, most likely. If we take a look at their deck breakdown, very, very heavy Chaos Turbo team, playing it 2/3 of the time. Similar to Masters of Oz, not a team that plays a lot of control here. So, honestly, we probably are going to expect a lot of Turbo versus Warrior, maybe even some Warrior mirrors, is my guess. We do see a little bit of Lockdown Burn played here. We do know that Masters of Oz doesn't play a lot of like control, which Burn is kind of naturally good against, so would be surprised to see that here in the playoffs, but is always an option to kind of throw a wrench in things, right? But definitely a team that favors Chaos Turbo, is capable of pulling out Warrior or even some weirder stuff if need be. But it's kind of interesting to see two teams with relatively similar metagame breakdowns. It's like mostly Turbo, little bit of Warrior, and then a little bit of weird stuff after that, right? So we could see a lot of turbo mirrors, or we could see some weird kind of like niche picks with teams trying to outmaneuver the prep of the other team. So could be a little bit of a volatile war in that regard, where the pairings end up actually mattering pretty significantly. If we go ahead and take a look at the players here, scrolling all the way to the right, thanks to our good friend Rixa here, who likes to throw out a bunch of crazy strategies here, playing 5 different decks here in the regular season to a solid 4-3 record. But in terms of MVP contenders, they do have 2 players in the top 10 of the MVP standings after the regular season, which is really, really good. So basically, we had Masters of Oz, 4 players in the top 25 versus Damage Step 2 players in the top 10. So maybe in terms of consistency at the top level, Masters of Oz a little bit more stacked at the top. But notably, the fall off between Gulaz and Psychotic here, the MVP contenders, to kind of the next, record of players here with MMF, Rixa, even Bobby Buckets. Very talented players, and it doesn't look like there's a very clear drop off really between the top 2 and the rest of the team. A little bit more depth there, maybe. A little bit more options available to them as well to fill out the last few spots of this 6-person roster. So definitely something, I'm very excited for this matchup because I think these are 2 cool teams that have the capability of playing some cool decks with some players who have had very, very strong seasons so far. That will be interesting to see, go head to head. So we have our Wave 1 pairings here. Some pretty interesting matchups here. Unfortunately, none of the seeded players did end up clashing, but definitely still some, solid matchups against players with a lot of talent. For our feature match here, we're going to focus in on Dueling High, one of the seeded players from Masters of Oz. We know primarily a Warrior player, but does play a lot of Chaos Turbo as well, versus MMF from Damage Step, who plays Chaos Turbo pretty much exclusively. So expecting either a Turbo Mirror or Warrior versus Turbo, most likely. Kind of the expected matchups that we could see, from the prep from both teams. So let's hop into it. As always, I've randomized the seats of both of these players as to not spoil the outcome. Let's hop into it. We are expecting MMF here, like I said, on Chaos Turbo versus Dueling High, either on Warrior or Turbo. So depending on what that matchup is, actually could very well favor Dueling High if they were able to sneak in that Warrior versus Turbo matchup that's generally considered slightly favorable to Warriors, I think, nowadays. Gonna head right into it, though. Looks like Dueling High won the RPS. Very, very important, regardless of which of the two matchups we see. Going first is really nice in the Turbo Mirror, also really good if you're playing Warrior against Turbo, as I always say on this channel. Dueling High is going to lead out just with a set back row pass, so not really revealing too much about what they're playing. Maybe means a little bit more Warrior, just because they have, a lower monster count, and even if they do have a monster in hand, they don't always want to normal summon turn 1 and just throw out a monster to die. Right, Turbo's turn 1 monsters are usually a lot safer than Warrior because, they're flip monsters, so they like float and things like that. Whereas Warrior, if you're just summoning a beater and it gets beaten over, you're just going -1, right? So if I was MMF here, I would be expecting Warrior a little bit more than Turbo, I think. Not only because Dueling High plays it a little bit more frequently, but also just this turn 1 feels a little bit more like a Warrior opening than a Turbo opening. MMF here, though, we are going to go set monster pass. Cool. So neither player really shooting off the fireworks here early on, but, jockeying for position, of course. Dueling High, gonna fire off the Nobleman of Crossout, banish the set monster. It is a Gravekeeper Spy, so if this is in fact Warrior versus Chaos Turbo, that's gonna be really nice for Dueling High, getting those spies out of the list. And I guess we'll probably get some intel here if Dueling High banishes any spies or not. Yeah, so no spies in Dueling High's deck. So now basically likely confirming, unless they swap to some deck that we haven't seen them play at all in the regular season, basically confirming that we have a Turbo versus Warrior matchup here. So Dueling High finding probably the matchup that they wanted when they loaded up Warrior here. Gonna fire off that Rhoda, all but confirming it now, and then go for Donzalug with the empty back row. So really nice play there. Knock to clear out the Spy, getting rid of Turbo's strongest defensive option, and then we're gonna go Rhoda for Donzalug and start whittling down MMF's hand here. So really, really good opening here for Dueling High. Waiting to use their normal summon for when they can actually, attack with the monster and get some value, right? Most of Warrior's monsters in their deck, they get value. They have effects that trigger on attack, which is another reason why they don't, generally summon a monster, or why it's common to see them not summon a monster turn 1 if they don't have to, because you want to be, if you don't get to attack with the monster, you're probably not getting value out of it, right? So I like the strategy, a little bit of a slow roll here from Dueling High, and they're going to snag a Magician of Faith out of MMF's hand, which does get a Light Engrave. Maybe not the end of the world for MMF, because it doesn't seem like they open any powerful spells. So losing the flip effect isn't the end of the world, but of course going -1 is never a good thing. They're going to go set 2 back row as well, so really formidable opening here from Dueling High. Having the knock to clear out the board and the row to go for this Donzalug and go up a card early on. So MMF a little bit behind here. Plenty of Yu-Gi-Oh! Left to play, but advantage Dueling High here early on. MF has Tsukuyomi here, which generally is a very strong card against Warrior, but specifically not so great against Donzalug and then also like DD Warrior Lady are the 2 cards in the deck normally played that Tsukuyomi actually doesn't get over. However, Turbo, of course, will often, Turbo's main decking double Nobleman of Crossout, like pretty much every deck in the format. So using it in combination with Suk is generally the best you'll get out of your Nobleman's game 1 against Warrior, unless they're main decking flip monsters, which I'm not a huge fan of, because like if you're playing Warrior, why are you going to main deck flip monsters and turn your opponent's knocks on game 1? Post side, you get to play the mind game of am I bringing in flips, am I not? So it definitely makes sense post side. But in the main deck, I'm a little skeptical about flips in Warrior, unless it's like something that you're fine getting knocked, like a Magician of Faith, because then it rips out your opponent's faiths, things like that. Either way, though, we're going to go Suk, flip down the Donzalug, expecting to see the Nobleman come through here. That's exactly what we see, so MMF getting solid value for their knock in a matchup where it's generally kind of dead. So going to be happy about that. Donzalug gets banished, and Suk can go ahead and beat in for 1100. Dueling High is going to Saku that, even though Suk was only threatening some damage, because, like I mentioned, especially with one of the 2 monsters that doesn't die to Suk gone, this Tsukuyomi can do a lot of damage later on. It'll make Dueling High's turns a lot more awkward if they can't summon a monster for fear of it getting run over by Tsukuyomi. So even though Suk isn't actually threatening anything here outside of damage, makes sense to Saku just to get rid of it and take away one of Turbo's strongest, threats in the matchup. MF's just going to go set a back row pass. Dueling High playing this out very well. MST is going to pop that back row once again. So yeah, standard Warrior game plan here. Get out to an early lead. Simplify the game state. Get into top deck mode where you're definitely favored. Notably, MMF does have Chaos Live with the Tsukuyomi hitting the grave. So maybe that Saku you know, is a little bit more risky than it normally would be. But if you have an out to chaos in hand, I think this is fine. We'll see if that ends up being an issue for Dueling High later on. Either way, though, no back row here to worry about. We're going to go ahead, summon DD Warrior Lady, get in for another 1,500 points of damage. I'm not sure if they top deck the DD Warrior Lady, but honestly, you maybe could have not Saku'd the Suk to keep Chaos out of the grave, because it's not like your next play is going to die to Tsukiyomi. You know what I mean? And now MMF can easily just go like summon Chaos Sorcerer, banish the DD Warrior Lady, which would kind of suck. So maybe a little bit of an early Saku there. Of course, they could have top decked DD Warrior Lady and didn't know that that was going to be the play for the turn. Or they could just have an out for the Chaos, like a Snatch Steal or something, where you're actually fine with them playing it. But potential opportunity to hold the Saku there. I guess maybe if your other back row isn't chainable, maybe you just want to, not play into Heavy Storm by just using the Saku at the first available opportunity, maybe. Something to think about. Some food for thought there. Either way, though, DD Warrior Lady going to hit in for 1,500. Nice little clock here on MMF. Keep them on the back foot. Keep them struggling to stabilize. Gonna go set a monster pass. Just trying to get someone in the way. We know it's not going to be that Gravekeeper Spy. So DD Warrior Lady will be able to kill whatever this is. We'll just, remains to be seen if it'll trade or not. Could be like a Knight Assailant or something. Dueling High has top deck Delinquent Duo. That's pretty good. So already gone up another card. Ripping out MMF's hand. We got main deck card destruction here. Not a card you always want against Warrior, but moot point, of course, because it's getting hit by the duo. And then Tribe is going to hit the grave as well. So nicely timed duo there from Dueling High, getting max value and really leaving MMF with basically no cards to do anything with. We're going to go normal summon. Ooh, main deck Zambira here out of Dueling High. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Based on the prep, we know that Damage Step likes to, if they're not on turbo, they're probably playing Warrior or some other sort of aggressive deck. So main decking Zambira is a nice way to hedge that, right? So like we'll see Zambira attack over the set monster, DD Warrior Lady get in for 15, continue the clock here. It's going to be a Dekoichi, so that'll at least cycle for a card for MMF, but now the shields are down and DD Warrior Lady can get in for some more damage here. So MMF, not too many cards to their name. Facing down a 3-turn clock at this point. Back up against the wall decently. Gonna set a back row here. Mirror Force is definitely real, right? We haven't... Oh no, Mirror Force is in the grave. That is a little bit unfortunate there. When did the Mirror Force get used? Oh, the MST popped the Mirror Force, yeah. So well-timed, I missed that. But well-timed MST there. Sniping another key defensive card. And that's gonna be, Now Dueling High knows that they can kind of attack with impunity here because there's no Mirror Force to worry about. Yep, so we can go ahead and normal summon Ninja Grandmaster. This does play into Torrential Tribute, but that is kind of falling out of favor in the main decks of a lot of turbo players. So maybe, a calculated risk here, expecting that MMF will not be main decking the Torrential. We're going to go get in for 2,300. It's going to be an MST. Pop in the back row. Oh, in case it's Ring of Destruction, you want to use it before the damage comes through, so they can't go like attack, ring for game. If you MST now, then they can't ring because then they won't get the attack in. Or I guess they could just ring the Zambira, though, if it is that. It is the Solemn, though. Okay. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. They did go set 3 early on, so decent chance that one of them is the Solemn. Either way, though, Warrior Lady and Ninja Grandmaster will hit in for a big chunk of damage, and Dueling High will be able to pass with lethal on board. And MMF here, once again, very much back on the wall. Upstart Goblin to try and dig for an out here. Just going to concede, though. Yeah, I mean, that was over pretty early on. Dueling High got off to a really good start with that early knock plus Donzalug combo, and then just really never let up the pressure, was able to have a bunch of back row pieces to trade 1-for-1, found that duo to really seal the deal, and yeah, really solid win there for Warrior in game 1. We will go to game 2 here. Like I said before, very important to go first in this matchup, so MMF definitely a little bit favored here, I think, and interested to see what exactly their post-side plan against Warrior is going to be. Are they on the Chaos Control smokescreen that's rising to popularity? Are they on the traditional Zambira Sakuretsu plan? Are they running like Mystic Tomatoes, which I know a lot of teams have been messing with recently? Lots of options to see here. Just going to go set a monster pass. Very similar opening to last turn, but this time they're up a tempo. So a little bit stronger. Dueling High here has Blade Knight, which is a good turn 1 play, into everything except for specifically Gravekeeper's Spy. And that is exactly what they ran into. So slight advantage for MMF here. Resolving a Spy here, Dueling High, not able to open Nobleman of Crossout like we saw last game. And so the Spy will be able to resolve, and already a pretty solid lead here for a Turbo. Anytime you can resolve a Spy, have them both in defense position, you're going to be really happy. It's going to be a big, big wall for Dueling High to try and eat their way through unless they have Ninja Grandmaster on lock or a Tribe ready to go. Going to set a back row pass, and MMF will be able to enjoy this stalemate position for a little bit. Got Heavy Storm clear at the back row, hitting a Mirror Force. Nice one for 1 play. Maybe has a Tsukuyomi or something to deal with this Blade Knight. We're going to go Sangan, and then, we're going to Creature Swap. Okay, so MMF seems to be on the Chaos Control smoke screen here. So we've got Creature Swap, swapping the Sangan with the Blade Knight, going to be able to beat over that Sangan, trigger the effect in their own graveyard, and get a nice little search there. Could go for Tsukuyomi, could go for Sinister Serpent. Lots of good options. And we're going to go for big damage here as well. Maybe has some back row ready to go to protect these Gravekeeper Spies, or is just saying, you know what, maybe you can kill one, but that's fine because I will crack back. Gonna get in for big damage. Blade Knight, 600 points of damage over the Sangan. MMF will get the search. Grabbing a Tsukuyomi, yeah, like I said, just a very, very good card in the matchup. And then both Spies will hit in for 24. So MMF saying, I can get my beat down on too. Little double Gravekeeper Spy action, stealing this Blade Knight, and suddenly Dueling High is quite far behind, both on board and in cards, and in terms of life points. So it could be a very quick game 2 here, with some pretty back-breaking plays early on in both games so far. Dueling High with the early Donzalug last game to take an early lead. MMF here with a very, very solid Gravekeeper Spy defensive setup plus Creature Swap and Sangan combo to go off to an early lead here in game 2. Dueling High here is going to Snatch Steal back their own Blade Knight, so both players very much fighting for control of this. This actually could be an easy way to clear out both of these Spies, though. So MMF getting aggressive with those Spies, but maybe a little bit too aggressive, because if Dueling High has pretty much any monster in their list, they'll be able to get over both of these Spies early on for very cheaply, right? Ooh, and one of them is even a Donzalug, so they're going to be able to not only clear out the Spies completely, but also rip a card out of MMF's hand. And Donzalug is also safe against the Tsukuyomi that we know is in MMF's hand. So Dueling High hitting back here. Thought that was a very strong play from MMF, but no back row to protect their board. Getting aggressive with the double Spies, but getting punished immediately by Snatch plus a monster to completely wipe out their board. Setting 2 back row to power up Blade Knight to 2k, get that extra 400 points of damage in. And this Donzalug is going to rip out a card too. Hitting that Tsukuyomi as well, so this Blade Knight is now safe. And what a turnaround here. I mean, Snatch Steal is one of those cards, but potentially an unforced error out of MMF going for that double Spy hit. Could have left one in defense position, which would have played around this. But went for broke. Was able to get a lot of damage in, but now is back in a losing position with a pretty formidable board staring them down. Going to draw for turn, though. Gain a little bit of life from Snatch Steal. It's not like this clock is insane, but they do need to get something in the way of this Donzalug. Otherwise, they're just going to lose all the card advantage that they worked so hard to secure earlier on. Breaker the Magical Warrior is a really nice play. If that was in the hand the whole time, then maybe we're not worried about Snatch Steal. So maybe this was the play all along. You can go Breaker, pop the Snatch Steal here, or Breaker just pop a back row and try and kill the Donzalug or something. Couple options. We're going to go for the Snatch Shield. Going to go for just guaranteed board presence here, especially with the Mirror Force gone. Pretty safe. You can start getting aggressive if you want. And Blade Knight, luckily, even without, at full power, still big enough to get over this Donzalug, so this doesn't, lose to a Sakuretsu armor on the Breaker or something like that. So Blade Knight's going to go ahead, kill that Donzalug. And Breaker will get in for 16. Dueling High thinking here. Going to take that full damage. And Snatch Steal giveth, Snatch Steal taketh, right? It's a very dynamic card, able to steal you board control at the drop of a hat, but it can be taken away at the drop of a hat as well, in this case, thanks to good old Breaker the Magical Warrior. And the pendulum, once again, here in game two, very back and forth game, but it's going to swing right back in MMF's favor. Had their board completely wiped here, but then Breaker completely picking apart Dueling High's board. Had a couple back row here, but nothing that could stop this play from coming through. And MMF is going to take that all the way to the bank for now. Gets a path with lethal on board, or pass with lethal on board very early on. Blade Knight plus Breaker coming through, threatening to hit in for 32. Dueling High, what you got? Gonna go set a monster pass, get something in the way. Now Warriors are capable of playing actual flips post side, like I mentioned before, so could be a Gravekeeper Spy, could maybe be like a Magician of Faith would be nice to regrab that Snatch Steal. So this is something that MMF does have to give a little bit of consideration to. Just going to go attacking with this Blade Knight, though, and it is a Gravekeeper Spy. Okay, so Dueling High is on spies of their own post side. Looks like they have no... Okay, yeah, they're going to summon out the second copy. And this is a funny board. Chaos Turbo has Blade Knight plus Breaker staring down two Gravekeeper Spies on the side of Warrior. Normally, you would see the exact opposite, right? But Warrior is capable of flipping the script as such, especially when they're running flips post side, and we end up in this pretty interesting board state. Now, the reason why you normally see this on Chaos Turbo's side is that they're generally the slower deck in the matchup, so they're happy to sit behind a spy wall for forever. If the board stays like this is actually really good for MMF, because the more complicated the board state gets, the longer the game goes, the more Turbo is favored. So even though Dueling High is able to set up this little stalemate here with these Gravekeeper Spies and getting it resolved, stalemate does not favor them, so they're going to have to find some way to break this. Otherwise, MMF, no reason you can't just chill and sit, here and draw a bunch of cards, right? In phase two, going to set a monster. Some potentially good spells engraved, so potential threat here for Dueling High to worry about. Going to go ahead and let's see if they can break this stalemate. We're going to go Mystic Swordsman level 2, which can go ahead and kill this set monster, but then will likely die to one of MMF's monsters on the crackback, so maybe just a prolonged one-for-one trade here that they're going for. Could get baited if this is like a Sangan or something. It is a Mystic Tomato. Okay, so MMF is on the Chaos Control Tomato side deck plan that is popping up more in popularity here against Warrior lists. See if it'll end up being the secret to success in this matchup. But Mystic Swordsman effect gonna come through, and because Mystic Tomato did not die by battle, it died to the Mystic Swordsman effect. Its effect will not be able to trigger, and that's just gonna be a nice little temporary +1 here for Dueling High. Of course, Mystic Swordsman a little bit of a sitting duck for either of these monsters next time, but at least able to prevent like a Magician of Faith resolution or something like that. So probably worth going for that play. Especially when you're in the stalemate, you at least want to prevent MMF from making progress, I think is the idea. So I do like the play. MMF here, just going to go and kill that Mystic Swordsman, as expected. Is going to be 700 points of damage, which ain't, definitely not going to scoff at that if you're MMF. But then we're going to go set another monster. With the Mystic Swordsman gone, we'd need like Top Deck Knock or like Rhoda for Exiled out of Dueling High to answer this. MMF could have smartly tried to bait out set monster removal with the Mystic Tomato and is now setting up for a bigger play with a potential like Magician of Faith. See if they get rewarded for that. Dueling High here. Once again, clock is ticking. You do need to break this stalemate at some point. Otherwise, the game will just be completely out of reach. We do have a bluff set Reinforcement of the Army. So surely this other back row is Solemn Judgment. Or they just kind of risked playing into... no, never mind. Heavy is gone. Heavy was gone since turn 1. So they were safe to bluff set things just to power up the Breaker or power up the Blade Knight earlier. That seems fine. We can go Rhoda for Exiled, though. Deal with the set monster, expecting MMF to have gone for some sort of bait there. And they find the Magician of Faith. Okay. So yeah, nice play there from Dueling High, recognizing that this was potentially a pretty solid threat. This does get a light engrave, though, for MMF, though, which is, if they have a Sork or a BLS in hand, would be a very good way of start whittling away these spies and breaking the stalemate, so potentially something for Dueling High to worry about. But, of course, you're not going to let a potential chaos play get in the way of you answering the Magician of Faith, because Faith is just an absolute insane card in the format. But now another potential threat here for Dueling High to worry about, and they still have not managed to break this stalemate. So MMF still very much in the lead here. Top deck Upstart Goblin, trying to dig into some good stuff. And we find the Chaos Monster, slam it down. Light Engrave, it does end up mattering. We can start banishing these Gravekeeper Spies. Really good play here from MMF. We're going to Torrential anyway, so it's not going to matter, but Dueling High kind of forced to break this stalemate. This will wipe the board for MMF. This does get Light Dark Engrave for Dueling High as well, if they've been holding on to a BLS for a while. And now the board has pretty much opened up, and we're actually kind of even in cards here, right? MMF was able to go first, so they're not actually up a card here. So actually Dueling High finding a good time to go for that Torrential, wipe the board, break this stalemate, and now they're in kind of a near top deck situation, which maybe favors them. They are quite down on life, though, which could end up mattering. Notably, though, now that we're in this near top deck situation, Dueling High has Chaos Live while MMF does not, which can be a pretty big, swing point for these matchups once we get into this sort of near top deck war. Dueling High, though, found an opportunity to fight back with that Torrential Tribute, break that stalemate, and we have an aggressive monster to follow it up, so really, really nice play here. Kaiku, the Ghost Destroyer, coming down, threatening to absolutely ravage MMF's graveyard here. I think it's not the end of the world, because it's going to be a while till you turn them off of Darks. But 1,800 points of damage is still nice to start clocking the opponent. MMF does have the Scapegoat here, though. Going to block the damage and the Kaiku effect. Protect their graveyard for the time being. And 100% confirming that they are on the Chaos Control smokescreen here, post side. Kaiku will go kill one. Yeah, you got to make progress. Too late to try and play like a Goat Lock game is my guess. MMF here. And it's not like MMF can summon multiple monsters, really, if they wanted to anyway. We're going to go normal summon Sinister Serpent, likely setting up for a creature swap, if I had to guess. Oh, we're going to go United We Stand. We have United We Stand out of the side. That's insane. Okay, so this is just a massive Sinister Serpent here. Holy moly, this is 3,200. It's a 3,500 attack. Sinister Serpent, the strongest you'll ever see this little reptile. Definitely not a card I expected to see post side against Warrior, but if you're playing Scapegoats, it has utility, and this is going to be a big old Sinister Serpent ready to beat over this Kaiku. Dueling High thinking about it, and that is going to connect. That is a ton of damage. And now MMF is suddenly passing with lethal on board. Holy moly, did not expect that, but man, using this, even if the Sinister is dealt with, it's not like it's a 2-for-1, right? And you've already, you basically, United We Stand +1 by killing this Kaiku. So, getting tons and tons of value out of this surprise side deck card. Is this the missing piece to the Turbo versus Warrior matchup post side? Do we side into Chaos Control with United We Stand as a little punch? It's working out here. Dueling High back up against the wall, facing down lethal. Will a Sinister Serpent equipped with United We Stand do you in? Would be one of the funnier endings to a match I've seen so far this playoffs. Just gonna set a monster, set a back row. Gotta deal with this Serpent. It's a big old threat. Gonna go set a back row in case it's a Morphing Jar, I guess. Attack in, hitting DD Warrior Lady. Okay, so this is actually the one card in the list that would plus, well, I guess BLS as well. One of two cards in the list that actually pluses in this scenario, because you get to trade DD Warrior Lady for both the Serpent and the United We Stand. So unfortunately, the funniest board I've seen in the War League playoffs will be destroyed here, but MMF's still in a really solid position, I think, overall. Has these goats on the board to insight their life. Dueling High is still at 1,400. There's still like Ring left in deck. Might be a few turns before MMF can actually draw into a threat to close this game out, but they're in a pretty solid position. We're going to end phase MST, pop the new back row, hitting a Delinquent Duo, so bluff set there. Because Dueling High, of course, had no cards in hand, so you're really never going to get some value out of this duo at any point. So trading it 1-for-1 with the MST, probably the most value you get for that. Pretty happy if you're MMF there. Dueling High, though, going to activate Call of the Haunted. Okay. You probably go for the Blade Knight, I guess. Just get the biggest beater on the board. With no Chaos Live. I mean, you could go for Kaiku in case you're worried about like top deck Thunder Dragon into held Chaos in hand, which is possible. Or maybe you just go Blade Knight and get the biggest beater on the board. We're going to go for the Kaiku, so valuing the Floodgate effect. Going to clear out a token, set a back row. Few turns before this Kaiku can actually start attacking for some damage. But getting some value in the meantime, at least out of the Floodgate effect, potentially. MMF top deck's Pot of Greed, though. Absolutely insane top deck. Going to refill the hand, and yeah, Dueling High essentially forced to solemn that. Going to cost them 700 life, but I don't think you can let the pot resolve at this point in time. You're basically all in on this Kaiku play. Just going to pass turn. Dueling High slowly whittling these away. Going to kill one, set a back row pass. So MMF only has one goat token left to their name. They're going to... Ooh, they did find top deck Thunder Dragon, so if they did have Chaos in hand, could matter. We're going to play around Trap Dust Shoot by discarding both Thunder... By going Thunder Dragon, search for both, and then discard one immediately so you don't draw up to 4 cards next turn. Interesting play there, but that is not a draw that deals with this Kaiku. So this goat token will finally be dealt with. And now Dueling High has a clear shot to MMF's life. And slowly but surely kind of grinding this one back. I thought Turbo was going to be in a really, really solid spot. But Solemn to prevent the Pot of Greed, preventing a snowball. Had the perfect answer to the Serpent plus United We Stand play with that DD Warrior lady. And now this Kaiku Floodgate effect could maybe be doing something. Yeah. Dueling High suddenly in a pretty solid spot here. MMF going to set a back row pass. It does survive. No dust tornadoes or anything. We're going to get in for 18, though. MMF has the Mirror Force. Okay, so finding the Mirror Force to answer that Kaiku, removing Dueling High's threat. Will MMF be able to find a threat? Or will Dueling High be able to stick something here? We're going to go, okay, BLS. So maybe holding on to that for a very long time, waiting until the Kaiku is dealt with. And now we're just going to go ahead and slam down the BLS and try and go for game here. No Mirror Force to worry about, no Torrential to worry about. If you run into a Saku, you run into a Saku. I think going for game here just makes sense. Get in for 3k. Saku is going to hit it, though. And we will continue on here. Main phase 2, we got Swords of Revealing Light. Pretty nice card against Warrior here. Especially in these top deck scenarios, just going to buy you some time to draw into stuff and get out of this top deck scenario, right? So pretty nice play there. BLS for game, not going to come through, but that's one less battle trap that Dueling High has. And, you know, with only 700 life, most cards in MMF's, or most monsters in MMF's list will be able to attack for game here. Dueling High draws for turn. Going to set a monster pass. First turn of Swords gone. We got Tribe Infecting Virus going in, 1600 vanilla. And it runs into a Kinetic Soldier. Okay, so MMF just going to take a little bit of damage there since Tribe is not a warrior. But main phase 2, we could just go nice little 1-for-1 trade, call Machine, kill that if MMF chooses. And they are going to do that. Last card in hand, of course, was Thunder Dragon, so definitely more valuable than the Kinetic. Interesting to see Dueling High bringing in Kinetic Soldier against Chaos Turbo, by the way. Generally, obviously, an anti-warrior card. But sometimes Turbo does bring in Zombiras. That's very common against warriors, so maybe it's like a little bit of anti-Zombira tech, potentially. Now, we haven't seen MMF play a Zombira yet. They seem to be on more Chaos Control, Mystic Tomato stuff. So maybe if you're Dueling High and you probably don't expect MMF to be running like triple Zombira, which some decks do, maybe if this game does go to game 3, you consider taking the Kinetic out because it doesn't seem to be getting too much value here. Just going to trade for a Thunder Dragon in the hand, and MMF gets to pass with lethal on board. Tribe here, of course, not the biggest monster, but it is at least protected by the Swords of Revealing Light. Dueling High has the Heavy Storm to deal with it, though, and maybe a monster to beat over this Tribe. We're going to get Kaiku to come down. You can start banishing probably Lights out of the grave because you're closest to getting rid of those. And that's a really, really nice 1-2 punch there. Heavy Storm to clear out the swords, Kaiku to beat over the Tribe, and suddenly MMF is down 2 cards. and is staring down a big Kaiku here. What are some outs? I mean, Snatch still wins the game on the spot. Ring of Destruction likely does as well. Some potential options here. Just going to draw set pass. Dueling High. Gonna go normal summon Ninja Grandmaster. Yeah, you're kind of on the clock here, right? At some point, MMF will draw Ring, and you're probably just going to lose. So, and there's no Mirror Force to worry about. Now, this does play into Torrential, but you do kind of need to amp up the clock and try and kill the opponent faster than just 1800 a turn. Seems correct to me. MF going to take the 1800 from the Kaiku, get all of their lights banished from grave. So now if they are playing the second copy of Stork post side, that will be turned off. And that's another potential answer here gone. We're going to get Scapegoat. Okay, so just buying some time here with the Scapegoat. Wait until after the Kaiku attack, because you can afford to take 18 here and still live. You know, basically you'll live with 3 tokens on the board, so it'll be a little bit longer for Dueling High to get through all of them again. And make it, you know, if you do top deck Metamorphosis in 2 turns, you'll still have tokens left to use it. Dueling High will set a back row pass. MMF here just has these goats here to wall them out, but just needs a ring or something or Snatch Steal. Set a back row pass, sure. Blade Knight here, gonna go for broke, try and kill all these goat tokens here, turn off potential creature swap top deck, potential Metamorphosis top deck. I like the play. And that is going to go through. Oh, we've got Book of Moon on the Blade Knight to keep the tokens alive. So yeah, like I said, MMF here trying to make sure, or trying to keep as many top decks alive as possible. They need at least 1 goat token alive in order to make top deck creature swap or top deck Metamorphosis an actual play here. So just using the Book of Moon, gonna go minus in cards, but by making your potential top decks better later on, perhaps, you know, it's worth it. Draw for turn, set a back row pass. Is it the ring that we need? Put summon Blade Knight, get in for a bunch of damage. And it is the ring on the Ninja Grandmaster. And there you have it. Yeah, like I said, it was only a matter of time before MMF drew the ring. Of course, could have been in the bottom 10 cards of their deck. But that's, you know, that's the issue with, you know, having to get through basically an entire 8,000 life point player when you're so low on life, right? Sometimes you're just going to lose to ring there. So MMF winning game 2 here, kind of by the skin of their teeth, finding that ring at the very last there to take it down, but able to force a game 3 here in this very, very important quarterfinal matchup. Game 3, we will be able to see Warrior going first once again, which we saw Dueling High use to great advantage back in game 1. We do know that Dueling High does have some flips that they're willing to bring in post side, so MMF could be potentially like leaving in a knock or something like that. Dueling High also now has confirmation that MMF is on the Tomato Chaos Control Smokescreen game plan, so they might tweak their side deck a little bit, or their deck post side a little bit. Maybe you bring in like a Sura Priest if you have those, or King Tigers or something like that. Definitely some potential for some interesting counter-siding mind games ready to go here. But Dueling High will get us started off here in game 3. This is for all the marbles, folks. We're going to lead off with a Graceful Charity, so opening some Trinity. You're always going to be happy about that. Going to go ahead and discard a Sakuretsu Armor and a Blade Knight. Sure. Fire off Pot of Greed. All right, a little bit of double Trinity action here on turn 1 for Dueling High. Going off to a nice +1 start here with some classic card filtration thanks to the Graceful. So off to a nice lead. And then we are going to set 5 back row pass, not using the normal summon. Maybe we'll see the Trap Dust Shoot come through here. Pretty formidable opening when you see your opponent go double Trinity into set 5 pass. A lot of potential stuff coming MMF's way here. Going to be hard to play through it all, especially when you're down a card. Trap Dust Shoot, as expected, coming through. We'll see what's in MMF's hand. Pretty solid hand. Ooh, we're on a little bit of Royal Decree action. Okay, so if you are playing the Turbo Smokescreen and you're like bringing out all the Trap Dust Shoots, suddenly, and if you're not bringing in Sakuretsu Armors, and if you're not playing like lots of Jar of Greeds, suddenly you're post-side against Warrior, if you're going for the Chaos Control Smokescreen, you're not playing a lot of traps. So Royal Decree could actually be another sort of interesting wrench in the plans here against Warrior. I really enjoy seeing MMF is definitely willing to try out a bunch of different stuff here. We see the swords, we see the tomatoes, we see the scapegoat creature swap stuff. Now we even see Royal Decree coming through. So definitely lots of newer sort of tech being brought in here to try and help Turbo, that has struggled a little bit recently in the metagame against Warrior. This Dust Shoot, though, is going to suss out at least the Royal Decree. MMF did open Thunder Dragon Graceful Charity, but Dueling High, of course, is just going to send back this Thunder Dragon and prevent that insane Graceful Charity play from coming through. Yeah, as expected. You could still maybe play the Graceful, depending on what you draw off of this upstart. But pretty pivotal Trap Dust Shoot there. If MMF's able to resolve Dust Shoot plus Graceful, they're right back into it after Dueling High opening Double Trinity. So this Dust Shoot doing a ton of work, because now this Graceful doesn't really have any discard fodder to go with it. You also get knowledge that the Breaker's in hand. You also know about Decree, which I feel like was a potential kind of ace in this up the sleeve of MMF here. But the Dust Shoot is going to suss it out. You also know about Swords as well. MMF, of course, can just fire off this upstart and at least get one unknown card in hand. But we'll see if it's enough. We're going to go slam this Breaker, try and pop one of the back row. It's just going to get hit by a Torrential, though. Dueling High protecting their other back row there. You got to assume one of these is probably a Solemn Judgment. But yeah, trading Breaker going 1-for-1 with Torrential, totally fine for Dueling High. If they had any monsters in hand, that is a reason, of course, to not summon one turn 1. Outside of all of the stuff I've talked about before about Warrior not wanting to summon in turn 1, especially if you have Torrential, good to keep the board clear of monsters so you don't have any collateral damage on your side of the field. And this will just nicely deal with that Breaker there. We are going to go fire off the Graceful Charity, though. So MMF, even if you don't have any discard fodder, you could draw into some, right? And it's also just good to get rid of a lot of the known cards in hand, since you got hit by Dust Shoot. So even if you're not going to plus off of this Graceful, in terms of the knowledge game, it could still be worth it. For example, Warrior doesn't really play discard fodder, so they just fire off Graceful purely for the filtration benefit. So it's still a very good card, even if you're not doing insane like Sinister or Night Assailant combos with it, right? See, 2 discards are going to be the known Swords and then a top deck Chaos Sorcerer, which is a little bit unfortunate, very much not live at the moment. Once again, we see if MMF did not get hit by that Dust Shoot and did not have their Thunder Dragon ripped away, their hand would have been a lot better because they could have comboed it with the Graceful. They would have had Lights in Grave to pair with this Breaker to turn on their Chaos monsters. But as it stands, they're not going to be able to plus off of this Graceful. They won't have Chaos set up in Grave, so they're just going to have to discard the Chaos Sorcerer. And yeah, it feels like that was just a very, very pivotal Trap Dust Shoot activation that's going to keep MMF a little bit behind here going into turn 2 for Dueling High. Gonna set 3 back row, though. Okay. So we know one of those has to be that Royal Decree, of course. We'll see if Dueling High is prepared for that. That could be pretty significant virtual card advantage here for MMF if that's able to resolve. A little bit sketchy, though, against Warrior, because they do play a lot of chainable back row removal. Not only are they always playing MSC, but they also generally are playing multiple copies of Dust Tornado, which you could just chain to the Decree, right? But if you're able to sneak it in early, it could be pretty useful. Maybe a little bit better going first against Warrior, potentially. Because you can then, shut off their opened Dust Shoots and things like that. So, yeah, you can see here, MMF going second with the Decree. You got hit by Dust Shoot. Your opponent was able to set a bunch of back row pre-Decree so they could chain stuff to it when you activate it. Feels a lot worse in this matchup going second. Dueling High has a premature Burial to come through. Blade Knight in the grave, so likely why they were not afraid to discard the monster to Graceful Charity, because they could just bring it right back with the premature. 1600 beater on the board, powered up to 2k by setting another back row. Have to assume there's a Solemn Judgment somewhere in the back row here. And we're going to start beating in for 2k a turn. Royal Decree is going to come through. Going to activate that first. Okay. We're going to Solemn the Royal Decree. So yeah, as expected, Dueling High had at least one Solemn back there. But now recognizing that this Decree, if this resolves, it's probably MMF's only way back into this game at this point for the most part, just because of the insane virtual card advantage that I can bring you. So yeah, definitely don't hate the Solemn here, just to keep all of your potential other cards live, right? Will cost you 4,100 life points. But when you're the one with board supremacy and you're the one pressuring the life points, not the end of the world. That's why Solemn is so good in Warriors, or one of the many reasons. Scapegoat is going to come through here, though, from MF. So despite this decree not being able to resolve, they are going to at least protect their life points and get a lot of these tokens on board. We know that they're on at least creature swap as well, so could potentially see a combo like we saw last game. And the tokens will come down to protect the life points. Dueling High will pass, but dealing with a single token, so at least slowly whittling away. And Scapegoat is very, very good specifically against Warrior. It's of course good against most aggressive decks in the format, but specifically against Warrior, where it's not a deck that's built to go wide, right? It plays a low monster count. Blade Knight likes being the only monster on the field. They play generally they just want to stick a single thread and then protect it with a bunch of back row. Scapegoat is really good in that scenario because this is 4 potential battle phases that Dueling High will not be able to do any damage because they're just waiting for their one single monster to get through all the go tokens. And then if they do go wide, it shuts off your Blade Knight. They play into potential Mirror Force, things like that, right? So yeah, Scapegoat, very good against Warrior just because of the way the deck happens to be built. MMF is going to draw for turn, still behind in terms of cards here, but at least, has a potential way of walling out the opponent. We do have the Metamorphosis, so confirm that that's in the 55 as well. We're going to go for a little Thousand Eyes Restrict play here, summon out the big fusion monster, try and suck in this Blade Knight. And that will come through. This will resolve. So we've got a 1600 attack point, Thousand Eyes, ready to start pressuring and Dueling High, and they are very, very low on life thanks to that early Solemn Judgment. So this is actually a pretty relevant clock here if this can connect. Hidden for 16, Dueling High takes it, and suddenly Thousand Eyes is a 2-turn clock. MMF was very much backed up against the wall, but found the classic Chaos Control combo here to make it a little scary here for Dueling High. Gonna set a monster here in case, they want to go for a little flip summon play if the Thousand Eyes gets answered. But very, very clear path to victory here. We'll see if Dueling High has any outs to this. Gonna draw for turn. We've got Knock on the new set monster, which is that Gravekeeper Spy. So obviously not going to do too much at this point in time with the Thousand Eyes still on the field. But if the game goes longer, you're going to be really happy that the spies are gone. See if Dueling High kept theirs in post side. Looks like they did not. Pretty cute. So we saw them turn 1, or game 1, no spies in the main, or no spies in the list. Game 2, bring them in, right? They get shown. MMF knows you're running flips now. Game 3, going to take him out, continuing to play that mind game. Maybe you caught MMF bringing in like a single knock or something to deal with the flip monsters. And now, the configuration has changed just a little bit to keep MMF on the back foot. So once again, the fun post-side mind games in this matchup on display here with Dueling High flip-flopping on if they want to keep the flip monsters in or not. We're going to go Rhoda here. Do we just grab Exile to deal with the Thousand Eyes? Definitely a potential option here. Just get the attack points off the board. We're going to go for Donzalug, potentially showcasing that they already have an out to this Thousand Eyes. Could it be like a tribe play? Let's see. I'm just going to go set it pass. Okay, so Thousand Eyes could just beat over it. Maybe it's DD Warrior Lady. Interesting play here. Could be like Magician of Faith or something. I don't know. MF setting a back row ahead of time in case it's like a Morphing Jar. We're going to go attack into the set. On attack declaration, we're going to Dust Tornado. The Blade... Oh, this is cute. So are we going set Donzalug, activate Dust Tornado to power down the Thousand Eyes so that it crashes in, MMF takes the damage and loses the card in hand? That is probably the play here. Wow, okay, so that's... Not only is that 1,500 points of damage, this Donzalug is going to come through and rip out this card. Not sure if MMF was prepared for that, and their BLS is going to get hit. Not live here, of course. Another reason why sending back that Thunder Dragon was quite a big deal earlier on. But that is a very, obviously one of the strongest cards in the deck, let alone the format. And this cute little Donzalug Dust Tornado as a battle trick, as a combat trick play here, is going to remove one of MMF's strongest pieces and deal a decent amount of damage to boot. So really nice play there from Dueling High. Main phase 2, We can just go ahead and suck in that Donzalug, but I do, it's a pretty interesting play from Dueling High. And this does, I mean, Thousand Eyes is still a 2-turn clock, but maybe Dueling High going for the read, saying, you know what, it kind of feels like they're playing like they have a Chaos Monster in hand. Let me try and eliminate that big threat, and it's going to work out here. Dueling High, ooh, we just have Tribe here. Tribe likely, we're going to discard Call of the Haunted. Are we calling Spellcaster? Surely, right? Yep, Tribe calls Spellcaster. You can go ahead, kill a token. Main phase 2, a single token will survive. No cards in hand to discard to call Beast and deal with the rest of them. But the Tribe now threatening to deal with the Go token next turn. MMF draws a back row, sets it pass. Will this Tribe connect in for some more damage? Yes, it will. Now, notably, we do know MMF is on Decree here in this match. So they're unlikely to be playing lots of Battle Traps. Maybe they have the Mirror Force still in. That seems pretty likely. But notably, if their plan is to use Scapegoat as like a battle trap to protect their life points, that's pretty bad into Tribe Infecting Virus, right? So Dueling High finding and sticking a pretty important threat here against specifically the post-side configuration that MMF is likely to have here. And once again, similar to last game, you are pretty significantly down on life points, but you're not in Ring of Destruction range at the time being. So you're a little bit safer than last game. And MMF is a little bit lower on life as well, and you have a pretty nice threat on board. So similar positioning to last game, but Dueling High in a little bit better of a spot. MMF just going to say draw go. We beat in for 16 here. Yes, we do. Tribe doing solid work here. Dueling High going to set a back row pass. MMF has the Pro Set Heavy Storm to wipe the board. That's going to get solemned, though. So now Dueling High is in Ring of Destruction range. Will we see Ring for Game in back-to-back games here for MMF? It could be in the cards. Dueling High definitely wanted to protect their back row here. We're going to get Tsukuyomi come down, though. Okay, interesting play. So MMF going for the heavy to try and clear the way for this Suk to beat over the Tribe. Now there are a couple back row here to potentially deal with this. We'll see if they're anything real, though. But we're going to Creature Swap. Nice. The classic Creature Swap plus Spirit Monster combo. That will go through. Gonna pass there. Suit goes back to MMF's hand in the end phase. And now suddenly MMF gets to pass with lethal on board with the Tribe ready to go, flip summon it next turn, beat in for game. So Dueling High, very pivotal game 3 here. Very pivotal last few turns potentially here. Gonna draw for turn. Has to get over this Tribe most likely. We're gonna MST the back row, try and clear the way. Hitting that cheeky little United We Stand, which is kind of funny, but not going to do too much here for MMF. This game, going to eat an MST. Little bluff set, getting a little value there. But now the back row is clear for Dueling High. We're going to go normal summon Blade Knight. Kill that Tribe. Of course, could just die to the Tsukuyomi on the crackback, but you need to remove the potential lethal damage from MMF's side of the field, and at least you're going 1-for-1 with the Blade Knight, I guess. But once again, we find ourselves in this top deck scenario. MMF does technically have Chaos live, but not sure if they are running the second copy of Chaos Sorcerer post side, so maybe it doesn't matter. Whereas Dueling High does have their very own BLS live if they top deck it. So Warrior generally considered favored in these top deck scenarios, but especially favored now if they do happen to have the Chaos Monster live while MMF does not. Zook, of course, can just come down and deal with this Blade Knight, unless, pending whatever this back row is. We're gonna see Saku, though. All right. So the last back row was Saku, and this Blade Knight will stick around. One of the most efficient answers in the deck to it is gone, and Blade Knight is now a 3-turn clock here. MMF has a back row there, but once again, we're not really worried about battle traps. Scapegoat, of course, is real. We're gonna go flip summon Blade Knight, get in for 2k. MMF takes the hit, sure. Dueling High sets a back row pass. MMF, another back row. Nothing in the way of this Blade Knight just yet. Once again, battle traps, not something we really care about. Book of Moon gonna come down. Just a nice little +1 there for Dueling High. MMF using it to protect their life points. But that's just gonna be a nice plus. So a little bit of desperate play there. You can see the aggression in these top deck scenarios that Warrior can put out, forcing players to make card advantage negative plays just to stay alive, basically. Dueling High sets another back row pass, but the Blade Knight is still on the board, threatening to come down next turn again and do some more damage. We're just going to go activate the Scapegoat here. So we're going main phase 1 Scapegoat to play around a potentially set Dust Tornado, sniping it in the end phase. So just making sure these tokens get on the board ASAP. Won't be able to use a Metamorphosis or anything this turn if they have that. And this will wall out the Blade Knight, like I said. Hard for Warrior to go wide in this scenario, especially when they're top decking. Tribe is gone as well as Call and Premature, so that ain't coming back. So it's going to be a while till Dueling High can get through these Goat tokens. Going to go flip some Blade Knight, kill one, set a back row pass. Going to be a while. Both players very, very low on life. Dueling High once again in Ring of Destruction range for game. MMF sets a monster pass. What an absolute marathon here. Dueling High going to go attack that set monster. It is Sinister Serpent. So now not only do we have Goat tokens providing a really annoying wall for Dueling High to get through, there's also Sinister Serpent threatening to infinitely recur itself as a single wall. So now Dueling High definitely has to go wide if they ever want to make any progress, which could play into potential Mirror Force that we know MMF at least has in the 55 somewhere. Things are once again getting interesting. Dueling High finds another back row, probably wishes they had a monster instead. Really hasn't seen any monsters this game. This is just they've drawn 4 monsters so far this game. And one of them was off of Rhoda, right? That's pretty funny. So a lot of monsters in the remaining 18 cards in their deck, most likely. And then of course, going to re-grab the Sinister in the standby phase. Firing off Upstart Goblin. Okay, so now actually taking Dueling High out of ring range. I wonder if that was completely necessary, because now ring on Blade Knight is not GG. Gonna set a monster pass. Dueling High, gonna just attack it. It is Dekoichi. So MMF trying to be a little bit cute there. Expecting Dueling High to go attack one of the Goat tokens and try and make progress, because if the read is that this is just Sinister Serpent, there's no point in attacking it, right? But this is a nice little high-level heads-up play from Dueling High. MMF is the type of player who will try and bluff you, essentially setting something that's not the Sinister there and try and get some value. But Dueling High making the read, going for the attack, and getting value off the Blade Knight effect, negating that Dekoichi. So well played there, preventing MMF from digging deeper into their list. Past turn, actually was able to make a little bit of progress there. MMF now definitely sitting that Sinister Serpent as well as a back row. And now if you're Dueling High, you can safely go and kill these other Goat tokens. Right, end phase Dust Tornado on the new back row, which was another copy of Royal Decree. And yeah, like I said, Decree seems really good on turn 1 as the turbo player, but once Warrior's able to set a bunch of back row and they have their tornadoes and things like that, it's going to be hard to have this stick around, I feel like. And yeah, we've seen neither of them resolve this game. Dueling High draws for turn. Goes wide if you can. Yeah, going to go ahead and normal summon Zombira. We're going to ring the Zombira to deal 2,100 points of damage to each player. That's interesting. Both players will take 21. We're going to Snatch Steal a Goat token. We're going to heavy... Oh, what a play. Oh, man. So we're snatching the token to turn it into attack position. Heavy Storm wipe the board so the token goes back to MMF's side in attack position, and the Blade Knight can attack through for game. And so finding this line for lethal damage with Ring your own Zombira, dropping yourself to 150 life points, and then the classic Snatch plus Heavy combo, even though MMF has quite the wall here with double Goat token plus Sinister Serpent, just a single attack position. You know, the only important link in the chain is the weakest one right here. And Dueling High found a point to exploit, assuming this Heavy Storm resolves. And that is going to be it. Wow, what an insane match there. 2-1. Dueling High is going to take it down against MMF on Warrior against Chaos Turbo, but very, very well played from both duelists there. Game 1 was, a relatively quick Warrior win there for Dueling High. Just got off to a really early lead with some Don Zalug plus Delinquent Duo action. Game 2, MMF out to an early lead, but a really back and forth game, fighting over like a Snatch Sealed Blade Knight. MMF able to close it out though. And then here in game 3, what a marathon. MMF seemed to have stabilized with the Serpent plus Scapegoat board, was just trying to, find a way to deal with this. And notably, that upstart putting Dueling High at just enough life points. Not only did it put Dueling High out of range for MMF's Ring of Destruction to kill Dueling High while keeping MMF alive, it also gave Dueling High just enough life such that this Ring of Destruction, Snatch Steal, Heavy Storm play was lethal without killing Dueling High. So, yeah, I wonder if that was actually maybe a good time to hold Upstart. Of course, a lot of other factors. I'm not going to go super deep into the analysis there, but definitely got punished for using the Upstart, I think, right? But either way, man, what a crazy match between two top duelists in the format. This is the sort of quality gameplay we can expect here in the GOAT format War League playoffs, guys. We are in the quarterfinals. These are some of the best players in the format today, duking it out, and I'm really, really happy to be bringing you feature match coverage of these duels. Let's go zoom out a little bit and look at the Wave 1 results from this war, Masters of Oz versus Damage Step. As we saw, Dueling High was able to defeat MMF. However, overall, round 1 definitely went to Damage Step, with being able to knock out every other seeded player besides Dueling High. Jesse S, Envoy of Chaos, Jace, all falling. Psychotic, the top-ranked Damage Step player, did lose here to Bide, but we still have Gulaz left and some other players with very, very solid records. Bobby Buckets and Reeksaw also both had winning records in the regular season. So some heavy hitters here for Damage Step left, whereas Masters of Oz is going to rely on Dueling High, who we just watched, as well as a somewhat inconsistent Bide here to get, fight them through Wave 2 and beyond here. So definitely going to be excited to watch how the rest of this war unfolds, but Damage Step up 2 players here after Wave 1. Definitely let me know what you guys think about these teams, these players, this match, how you think this war will play out down in the comments. Really enjoyed this one today, and I will catch you all next time.